What we have here is one of the greatest sounding cars, E60 M5 V10. And what are my plans for this car is simply first to replace the roll bearings, the high pressure line, the valve covers. Since this car have about 135,000 miles, as you can see, and as far as I know, nobody did the roll bearings before me, so this is the first thing on the list. Then my plans are to, not my plans, what I have to do actually is replace the rear differential bushings, since the bushings are pretty much shot, the rear diff is leaking. This is pretty much the bare minimum which I have to do to this car before I actually can start thinking about pushing the V10 to the limits. So first let me start disassembling the car. I have to remove the intake boxes and probably the intake manifold, since I'm going to replace the valve covers and the radiator fan. This is pretty much what I have to remove from the top, and then I will lift up the car and continue from there. I'm pretty much ready to drop down the oil pan, and as you can see, I'm still supporting the engine from the bottom. I'm also supporting the engine from the top right now, but what I did to support the engine better, actually I ran a chain from the top. I used this L-shaped bracket and I hook it up to the engine mount, since if I go up the top, you can see on this side we have place to hook it up, but on the right side we don't have anything, and that's why I did this. And my support bar have two legs like every support bar, but as you can see on the left side, the leg doesn't sit as it should. It's kind of hanging up in the air a little bit. The oil pan is out of the way, and I already did out the bearings except these two. I just need to put the caps on. So let me show you how the bearings are looking like. They don't look actually that bad for the mileage. You can see a little bit of a copper from the top bearings, but the bottom bearings are kind of okay. I mean, there's some wear, but nothing crazy. And these are the new bearings, as you can see. And I'm using the OEM bearings with WPC treatment. I was going to use the BE bearings, but they were out of stock. I was waiting like a month for them, but then they couldn't get it for me, so I just ordered these ones, and I am using ARP bolts, and they are actually BE ARP bolts. They're a little bit cheaper, pretty much the same as the ARP ones. So now I just need to put the two caps on, and then I'm going to replace this line. This is the high pressure line which I need to replace, and I'm gonna be pretty much done with this mess here. It's leaking so much oil from the bottom, it's so annoying. Anyway, so I just took off the high pressure line, and I managed to pull off the line without removing the power steering pump. I just took off the water pump pulley, and somehow I managed through this hole to pull off the line. And now I have to put the new line on, which is right here, and which is gonna be a little bit more difficult, I think so, but I think I will manage to put her on. One of the most important steps is to set up the backwash for the Vanos gear, and for this reason I bought a dial indicator gauge, and this magnet base to hold the gauge, and the backwash should be 0.00024 up to 0.00031, so I'm right about on the middle of the recommendation, so I'm about 26, 27, 28, something like this. And when you try to set up the backwash, since you can adjust it from here, you are going to try to set it up a little bit more loose, so once you tighten it up, the backwash will be a lot less than what you set it up. So let's say you're gonna set it up for 29 and you're gonna go down to 26. Usually it's like this, at least for me it was like this, so I don't know. I was in the process of putting everything back together, but then I found out that the Vanos high pressure pumps are known to fail, so I took the pump apart and I found out the pump is in good condition. But what I also found out is that they did some revision of the gears, and as you can see, these are the old style gears which I had compared to the new ones, which are a little bit, the gears are a little bit sharper. They did the revision since the gear couldn't make a really good contact, and they had some failure with these gears where they are stripping down and causing some catastrophic failures to the engine. So what they did is actually they extended the tooths of the gears, and now they're a little bit longer, and the contact area it's a lot better than the old style. They also revised the guide rails for the chain, which I also bought, and this piston, and a few more parts which I also bought. So pretty much now I just have to put the new style gears, and then I can start putting the car back together. To drive in the new crank seal, I just use some cutting board, plastic cutting board, since I don't have the right tool for it. And what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna slide it like this over it. Bam. You see, you don't need a special tool, you can use just this. Some people are using this thing for a tool, but I couldn't make it work, so that's why for me this thing worked better. The wash adjustment is in specs with the new gears, as you can see, pretty much on the middle. Pretty much everything is back together down here. I also replaced the motor mounts. I put some new transmission oil, and I did a lot of cleaning. Now it's a lot cleaner than what it used to be. The whole underneath of the car was with old oil, grease, and it took me forever to clean out this mess. But now I'm going to work on the back, since you can see it's pretty greasy. It's the seal is leaking on the rear differential, and also the mounts are shot, so I'll have to replace them. The rear diff is out of the way, and I already took off the bushings, and the front one are the one which were in a bad condition. The rear one it's kind of okay, but I'm still replacing it with the poly bushings. The front one are already pressed in. Right now I'm on the rear one, which is a little bit more difficult because I had to drop the rear subframe with about 2 fingers. As you can see, there is not enough clearance for the bushing to be pressed in when the subframe is mounted, and that's the reason why I dropped the subframe. Anyway, it's not a big deal, just a little bit more time. Well, I replaced all the seals on the rear diff, and now I just have to put the diff back on. But unfortunately I'm not quite done with this car, because I found out that I have a leak right over here between the rear case and the front case of the transmission. So that means the bad thing is probably I'll have to drop the transmission down, open up the transmission, and seal it with a silicone, which is not fun. I knew that I have leak, but I was hoping once I tie down the bolts the leak will stop, but it didn't. And the bad thing is I already put a new oil. So anyway, I'm going to put the rear diff now and then continue from there. The rear diff is mounted, but now the transmission is out. So I tried to pull off the back cover while the transmission was mounted, but it was a complete failure. I was able to crack open the case, but it's really difficult actually to pull off the rear case. So what I did, I took off the transmission, as you can see. I cleaned her up a little bit, and now I just crack open the transmission like this. I can probably take off the whole case, but after this it's gonna be a lot more difficult to be put it back on. Well, the first attempt was a failure because apparently you don't have to take off these two bolts of the case. They're holding this thing right here. So I took them off because I was thinking that's why I couldn't crack open the case. So right now here is the rear case, and this is where this piece is going, and there was a bolt here and bolt here holding it, so it have to stay. So I'm gonna put it right now, and I'm gonna attempt again to seal it. So let's see what's gonna happen. The transmission is all sealed up, but these cars keep surprising me with the new things. Well, in my hands I'm holding another common problem for these cars. As you can see, the protective shield of the wire is missing. So what it happened pretty much, the shield was cracked and was chipping. So as soon as I start touching the shield, it's stripped. So my plan is pretty much to unpin every single wire from here, like this one, and swipe shrink tubing. And the shrink tubing I'm using is with a glue, which is a little bit better than the regular shrink tubing. And after this I'm going to use some electrical silicone for here, just to make sure no water will get inside of this sensor. And that's it pretty much. So let's get to work. Quick tip how to slide in the shrink tube. You can use a fishing line, tie it on the one of the ends, and just slide it. I will need to use my both hands, but pretty much that's the idea. Well, here is how it turned out. Not too bad. Over here I'll put a little bit of silicone, because I don't know if you can see, but you can see a little bit of the wire, but not much, because the shrink tube shrinked which is supposed to do, and kind of end up with a little bit of visible wire. And this is how it turned out. Not too bad. So I replaced also the output shaft seal, the input shaft seal, and I was thinking I'm ready to put this transmission back, but of course I stumbled on another problem. So this is the clutch fork pivot pin, and as you can see, it's pretty loose. It shouldn't be like this. So what I'm going to do, well, I grabbed some aluminum foil and I made myself a sleeve, something like sleeve. So I'm gonna put it over like this, and this should fix my problem. And now I just have to tap it in and it should be good to go. I also bought new fork because the old one it's kind of beaten up, and the thrower bearing, which is kind of expensive, but that's it pretty much. The new coach fork and thrower bearing are installed, and I think I am pretty much ready to put her back. This is what I had to do to be able to put the transmission back. Finally, the transmission is mounted, filled up with fresh oil, and I don't see any oil leaks, which is a good sign. So now I just have to put the drive shaft. I already replaced the central bearing with a new one, so let's do it. Finally, I'm on the last stretch, but of course it wasn't meant to be easy. Right now everything looked pretty clean, but before that it was a mess, like a lot of grease, and surprisingly underneath here in this hole it was a lot of grass, like old grass and some other crap. So probably a mouse was living here, because I found a lot of mouse poop, so I had to clean out this crap. That's why I disconnect everything here, otherwise it wasn't going to be necessary for the valve cover job. But so far everything look clean now, and now I just have to put the new gasket on, and from there everything should be good to go. The car is all back together, but of course there is another problem. I can't start the car, and the reason for this is steering wheel lock. I'm getting this error message. So what is actually happening, when I remove the key, the steering wheel is supposed to lock, but it doesn't. So I don't know if the steering wheel lock is broken, because I know the previous owner did replace it recently. But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try to reset it with the icon. I have the icon, and I will try to reset it, and hopefully it will work. Well, one problem is fixed. As you can hear it now, the steering wheel it's locking and unlocking, which is a good sign. Actually, what it happened while I was trying to work out my program, she crashed completely, and this thing started working, which is kind of weird, but still good. So let's see if she's gonna start. First start. Let's see if I have any fuel leaks. Transmission malfunction. Another problem. Це на повній компота. Finally, I'm driving the car. The first few times I wasn't able to start the car because I had to do some clutch adaptations, the slipping point of the clutch, pretty much all this kind of crap. So I did all this with the E60 and the car started right away. So I already did about 60 miles already, and the car is running pretty good, no weird noises, which is a good sign. And my plans for the future is pretty much to break in the rod bearings, and how I'm going to do this is simply driving the car under 5,000 RPMs and not exceeding 105 miles for about 600 to 1,000 miles. This is what I did on my M3, and some people don't believe in braking period, but I like to play it safe because it's better safe than sorry. The only thing which I don't like is the rear diff line. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's kind of annoying. I think you can hear it right now. And the reason for the line is because I did the poly bushings, the ECS poly bushings for the rear diff, and they usually are going to introduce some kind of in-cabin noise. But I also replaced the rear diff fluid with the Castro, and I know that the BMW are selling some kind of their own fluid, which I'm using on my M3, and their BMW brand, it's using some kind of booster to quiet down the rear diff. So what I'm planning to do is simply try to replace the fluid and see if this gonna make any changes. And the third thing, which it's very likely also, that the rear diff is not in the best condition and could be on the way out. This is how she sounds, no weird noises. I did about 200 miles already with the new rod bearings, so hopefully there won't be any weird noises in the future.